Welcome to 6 Questions from 6. Today we're interviewing New Jersey Assemblywoman Britnee Timberlake about her Fair Workweek legislation.
Question number 1. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, the district you represent, and what made you decide to become a state legislator?
A little bit about myself. I grew up as a military child. My parents met and fell in love in college in East Orange, New Jersey. And my father enlisted in the military, and I was born on the road overseas. And I traveled the world, and I've come back full circle to serve my community here in East Orange, New Jersey, which is one of the cities that I represent as a New Jersey State Assemblywoman. I also represent Clifton, Orange, as well as Montclair. And I am currently, doesn't last long, the youngest state legislator in both the state assembly as well as Senate. And it's an honor to serve people.
Great, thank you. Question number 2. What first made you aware of scheduling issues for hourly workers, and how are your constituents impacted by this issue?
What first made me aware is actually being a worker myself. It wasn't too long ago that I was taking 4 buses to a job. It's a very large food chain where I was a baker. And I would take 4 buses to be there very early in the morning. And that was after going through a 3-month training that lasted from around 11 p.m. to about 6 a.m. just to learn how to do the bakery items. And I was very committed to my job. And sometimes I would be asked to go to locations that were even further than the one that I was stationed at, which was 4 buses away. It wasn't close. And I would be asked to go to different locations that were further without much notice given at all. And when I sought to go back to school to complete my degree and sat down to have a conversation about that, instead I was handed a resignation letter that was written for me and done in retaliation. And that was that. And it was an actual nightmare. At the time, I didn't have children. I now am the mother of a beautiful baby boy. But I can't imagine what those who have their schedules change like that, who are responsible for families and people who are literally dependent upon them for care, what that does to their family unit and them as a whole. And I think it's incredibly unfair. So if given the opportunity to strengthen labor laws, I'm going to do that. And I'm so happy to be working with so many different organizations on this Fair Workweek, though.
Question number 3. What would your upcoming Fair Workweek legislation do, and how would the people in your state be helped by it?
So what it does is it requires fair shifts, and that the person's schedule is given to them in more advance than what is usually there, and that there won't be any retaliation should someone say, I'm sorry, I'm not able to work a double, or I'm not able to work this night, but I can work that night. We're not talking about protecting people who are looking for reasons not to work. That's not what this is. We're talking about protecting hardworking, dedicated people who want fairness in their schedules. And I think that people who are at the top or at an executive level or even middle management can understand the importance of and the power of having control over your schedule and how that spills over into your family life. And families are the unit of our society. If we don't have healthy families, then we don't have a healthy society. And we really need to make sure that we're setting that foundation for all levels of workers to make sure that they have a fair work week and are not being abused in this way.
Question number 4. Who have some of the champions for Fair Workweek legislation been in your state, and how are you working together as a coalition?
Working Families for sure, and Make the Road New Jersey. They have been formulating a coalition to really get this legislation off the ground. And they've been doing an awesome job. Also, there's a number of unionized labor people involved in the movement, but also union leaders too. One of the union leaders happens to be my assembly partner. His name is Thomas P. Giblin, and he is a union giant. He fights for workers' rights and has done that his entire life. So it's really an honor to work on a bill that really provides union protections for people who are not unionized, because these are the type of scheduling and things are the type of union protections that people get when they join a union. But what about people who aren't a part of a union? Then we hope that this Fair Workweek piece of legislation can be passed and signed into law to provide those protections for them.
Question number 5. Who has opposed reforming worker scheduling laws, and what are good ways to respond to their opposition?
I think those who are in opposition are people who may not necessarily understand what the bill is and why it's needed. It's usually major corporations that are looking to cut some of the red tape around the way they can and cannot treat workers. Not necessarily, I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt, not looking to exploit workers, but looking to have the option to, right? And I think this removes that option to exploit a worker who simply can't work, maybe a double, maybe they have to pick up their child from childcare. And to know that if they're not able to work some of these things that are asked of them, that they're not going to be fired for it. And really, so it's empowering the worker to be able to work together with the employer, but it's mainly major corporations that see an issue with the bill. But again, I just ask those who are running major corporations or the middle management there to imagine how their life would be if they were not able to have some type of say or command over their own schedule. Most of them would quit.
Question number 6. Is there anything else about your strategy or lessons learned from past efforts that could be helpful for legislators in other states to know?
I think it's important that something like this has to absolutely be grassroots, and that's why we're working with the organizations that we're working with. And if you have to make sure that you have people at the table who are willing to share their stories and to understand, to try to convince other legislators why this is true. Not everyone comes from a humble background or a background to where you were taking 4 buses to go to work as a baker. And that wasn't that many years ago. And here I am now as a New Jersey state legislator. And I know that one thing is for sure, I can never forget where I come from. And I have to help people who I interacted with while, living the life of a blue collar worker, service worker. And I was also a waitress too. And I think just hearing those types of stories are incredibly important and empowering. And that's what I would recommend that people do should they want to pass this in their state, is to make sure that you're working with grassroots coalitions who can help move this forward and who can build a support group behind the legislation to get the messaging out about why this is needed and what people are actually experiencing. That maybe if you want to go back to school and you say, hey, can I have a little bit of a schedule change, that you could be fired. So, and that's major. That was a part of my story, but it is not something that is not a part of so many other people's stories as well.
Thank you to Assemblywoman Timberlake. It's been such a pleasure to hear about your legislation to ensure a fair work week. And to all the legislators out there listening or watching, please reach out to helpdesk@stateinnovation.org for support on this and any other issue. This has been 6 Questions from 6. Until next time.